If you watch my content in the past, you'll know that I've grown tired of every new survival game releasing into early access. With that said, you may be wondering why I'm making a video on another early access survival game. There are two reasons I decided to try Sunkenland. First is the developers have been very accepting of feedback and are acting on it pretty quickly, and second is, unlike most survival games, there is a heavy focus on base defenses. So is Sunkenland worth playing right now? Let's find out. First things first, like I like to do at the beginning of all these videos, I'm going to let you know that all the footage in the background is going to be from the first hour or so of gameplay. I created a new save to record this. I'm not going to show you anything from my save that I've been playing on up to this point. Anything I talk about or discuss will be available, or is currently available on the game's website, Steam page, or you'll see it in the trailer or screenshots from the game. So there will be no spoilers in this that you wouldn't already be able to find yourself. I am a little bit late to the game here. Sunkenland's been out for a couple weeks, but I ultimately decided to play it, like I mentioned in the intro. So let's talk about the premise of the game. Sunkenland is a survival game where the earth is mostly covered in water, where most things are underwater. So most of the structures in the game are going to be underwater. You will be able to see some of the taller ones protruding out of the water, but there's going to be lots of buildings, roadways, things like that that are going to be underwater. There's also going to be some islands scattered around that are inhabited by various different NPCs. There's also some NPC built structures. You will be gathering resources like in most survival games, and because most of the game takes place underwater, most of the resource gathering will be taking place underwater, although there will be resources that can be gathered on islands, as well as the NPC-built structures. The game is occupied by several different hostile factions that are scattered around the world. Each of them will have different types of weapons and range from basically primitive-style enemies up to, I guess, advanced combat-style enemies in terms of the weapons and the gear they're using. The basis of the game is going to be where you're going to go out and raid the faction bases for resources and also to take them out. Currently, as I'm recording this, the NPCs, when you take them out, they do not respawn. I believe there are plans to have them respawn or have the world be repopulated at some point, although right now I'm just going off of what I've experienced. The factions that you raid will also raid your base, so that was the thing that got me into the game mostly. Was most survival games, you build a base and it's kind of just like there for show, or maybe you want to put your stuff in it. In this case, you will actually be attacked, and it will actually occur pretty regularly, so that was the one feature of the game that got me super into it. Next up, I want to talk about the survival systems in the game, so I'm going to start off with the one that typically is the one that pushes my buttons the most, especially if you watch my content, you'll know this. That's inventory management. So in Sunkenland, the inventory management is okay for the first few hours, but if you're playing solo, it'll eventually become a little bit cumbersome. And the reality is, it feels like the game is almost built around multiplayer, although you can play it solo. That's what I've done up to this point. And I'll be talking about ways that I think they can improve this pretty easily. It wouldn't be that terribly difficult to improve the inventory management, but it will become a little cumbersome after the first couple of hours. One thing I really like is the game does not have any weapon durability. So one thing that just really grinds my gears is when I'm constantly having to repair my gear and it costs resources. In this case, the weapons that you use, the tools that you use for gathering resources and fighting, they do not take any durability. You will have armor in the game. Armor will degrade from taking damage, but it can be repaired for free. So there's going to be a repair station you can unlock, and you'll be able to basically repair your armor for free. Just kind of think of this system like in Valheim, where you basically just walk up to the little bench, press a button, and bam, everything's repaired with no cost of resources. There's going to be ample food and obviously water because the entire world is covered in water. So hunger and thirst are pretty easy to manage as long as you're paying attention. It's fairly easy to set up a system where, and actually you can just go out and find enough food, but it'll be very easy to set up a system where you can manage your hunger and thirst. And then later on, there's going to be ways to improve that where you can just get better and better food. There's going to be a research bench, like in many survival games, which is used to unlock crafting recipes and can be upgraded to unlock more things. So as you upgrade your research bench, you'll be able to craft better and better things. The exploration is absolutely required, which is awesome. If you want to upgrade your research bench, if you want to craft things, you're going to have to go out into different parts of the world and gather those resources in order to just improve yourself and help yourself defend, as well as just progress through the game. Base building is required to protect your resources, so you will get raided in the game, and if you just have your stuff sitting in a chest and you're standing there when you get raided, there's a good chance your stuff's going to get destroyed and you're going to have to rebuild it. The base building has a good amount of options. There's several different building pieces. There's going to be also some traps to help you defend. We'll talk a little bit about that later on. And overall, the building in the game is fairly easy, although it does have some room for improvements, which I'll talk about later in the video. Repairing damaged structures is free, kind of like Valheim again. You just walk up, use your little repair hammer, and you'll be able to repair it. So no worries if your structures get damaged during a raid. As long as they don't get broken, you can repair them for free without using any types of resources. Combat in the game is going to start with melee weapons and expands out to range weapons. So you're going to start off with some basic weapons, and the first couple enemies that attack you will, it kind of feels fair. Like the raids progress based off of the gear you have. I'll talk about a little bit more about the raids in just a second. So you will get attacked after a few days and pretty consistently. And for me, like I said, the raids seem to increase in difficulty based on two things. I think it's time in game and what gear you've unlocked, even if you haven't raided enemy bases. So again, I'm going to talk a little bit later on, like just in a second, about ways I think they can improve it. I will say this right now. If you want to play this game and get the most enjoyment out of it, as of right now, as I'm recording this, and of course, if and when things change in the future, I'll make some updated videos or I'll post something down in like a pinned comment. Right now, if you want to get the most enjoyment out of this game, unfortunately, I would recommend turning off base raids. And the reason for that is you get raided. I think I got raided on like the second or third in-game day, and it wasn't too bad. But the raids started escalating even though I was not going out and attacking the enemy factions. So personally, I would like to see, like I said, I'll talk about some changes in just a second. But I was in the game basically for the base defenses and ultimately ended up turning them off until I was able to set up a base. Because playing solo, now if you're playing in a group of players, if you're playing multiplayer, because I think the game has, I think it's up to 15 players, although I have heard the devs recommend capping it at 5 right now until they optimize the game a little bit more. If you're playing solo, it's going to be very hard with the current way the game works to gather enough resources to build up your base and be able to defend it, because they happen very frequently. Lastly, I want to talk about, there are vehicles to help traverse the world. So you'll see these in the trailer. There's going to be various boats and stuff like that to help you get around. So getting around the map will become pretty easy after not too long in the game. So next up, I want to talk about some improvements I'd like to see. And since the developers are open for discussion on this, I will gladly share this with them. I'm going to probably go to their Discord also and share some things. So a couple things that I think would easily make the game more enjoyable would be to double the stack size for stackable resources. So there's a lot of different resources in the game. Many of them can be stacked. Some of them can be stacked in stacks of 10 or 20 or more. And you will very quickly fill up your inventory, especially if you're playing by yourself. And even if you have a vehicle, because the vehicles have storage on them, doubling the stack size would just help that massively. Increasing the storage capacity of larger vehicles. So there's a lot of different vehicles in the game. And from the ones that I've unlocked so far, they all have the same storage size, which is basically just a chest. So even with that, like your backpack, because you can upgrade your inventory to get a couple extra rows, and you can also have the vehicle storage. It's just not enough. So if they could increase the storage capacity of larger vehicles, that'd be pretty cool. Gear progression currently feels a little bit unbalanced. You will basically progress from the basic weapons all the way up to the advanced stuff. I feel like pretty quickly. I was not rushing it, and I felt like I got to it pretty quickly, so maybe they could slow that down a little bit. Because like I said earlier, that does affect your rage you're going to be getting. Base building needs to allow snapping pieces together. I didn't talk about this before. There's lots of options, but currently the only things that snap are going to be ladders and foundations. So, and the walls will snap to them. But if you try to make a multi-layered base and try to have 2 different layers of set levels of foundations, you have to sit there and basically make them get as close as possible, and it's basically impossible right now. So just having those snap together would be awesome. And then the enemy AI needs some work. The enemies, they'll sometimes just like stand there and let you kill them. Not usually. They'll usually come after you. But if you're the first base I raided was pretty easy. I just basically walked around in circles and took them all out. Now, granted, I did have better weapons than them at the time, but overall, I feel like the enemy AI could use some work. I did an advance. I did a raid. I don't want to spoil anything, but basically, I built up this great base, and this was in my stream the other day. Built up this base, spent hours building it. Turned the raids back on, and then the raid occurred, and none of the enemies even got into my base. They basically just stood outside using their ranged weapons, shooting it. So I don't know. I guess their goal is just destroy everything. I think it would be cool if they would actually maybe try to get into your base like they did at the beginning when they didn't have the ranged weapons. I think it would be cool if the raids only started after you're attacking a faction. So if I don't bother a faction, I don't see a reason for them to bother me until I actually bother them. That would definitely help with the raid frequency. And I think they should definitely only occur when you're near your base, and they should be less frequent. I went out in the water, went to an island far away, and it just says your base is under attack. And I have to like stop what I'm doing, go all the way back. And fortunately, it was one of the early raids, so it ended up not being a big deal. It's one of the reasons I turned them off was because I couldn't do exploring, because almost every time I would go out exploring, I would get my base getting attacked. And they were happening very frequently. Now, as someone who likes base raids, I'm all for having this in the game, but I just think they need to be balanced a little bit more. The foundation's there for a good system, but it just needs to be tweaked a little bit. And there definitely needs to be more traps to deal with raids by factions using mostly ranged weapons. So there's some traps in the game, which unfortunately I didn't get to test out, because by the time I built them, the only enemies attacking me were the ones that had ranged weapons. And what they did was they just stood outside and were just shooting my walls. And there's really only one defense mechanism to use against them. And at the time I did not have it unlocked. So I was basically just trading shots with them. And it almost turned into just like a shootout rather than being like an actual base defense. So is Sunkenland worth playing right now? I would say, like I mentioned, if you disable base raids, unfortunately, right now, the game is super fun. That was the part I was most looking forward to the game, so I'm a little bit disappointed, but I'm definitely going to continue playing it because I do like exploring around in the world. I want to take out more of the enemy bases. I've only taken out a handful of enemy bases in like 20 plus hours, so there's lots of enemy bases to take out. I've only seen, I think, 2 or 3 of the different factions, so I've not even seen half the factions that are currently in the game, so I definitely want to go check those out. I haven't unlocked everything yet, so there's plenty more to do. The exploration is fun underwater, and I like raiding the enemy bases. Hopefully they can fix the enemies raiding our bases. That will make the game even more enjoyable. But the foundation is there. Like, it's a super, like, there's a good foundation here for a game. I will say so far from what I've seen and what from some friends told me, the devs are listening to and taking action on feedback. So they did say they're going to do monthly updates. I really hope that happens because the big downfall of most early access survival games is the cadence of updates are just too slow and too infrequent. And what ends up happening is people just stop playing after they've done all the content and nothing new comes. So hopefully they're going to be they've been doing some patches and I think they did one regular update. Hopefully they keep iterating on that and they're doing consistent updates for the next 6 to 12 months to get the game where it needs to be. So basically the question that you've all been waiting for is the game worth playing? And I would say for $20, you should easily get more than your money's worth out of the game right now. Even if without the base raids, the game is pretty fun. It's a good survival game. I'll be honest, I was surprised by just looking at the trailer and from the early gameplay. I was like, yeah, is this just going to be another janky survival game? It kind of just looks like they took some assets and thrown them together. It's not the case. Most of the systems in the game work together really well. Progression, while it could be balanced a little bit better, is pretty good. You're rewarded for exploration. Combat is diverse enough where you're going from range to melee. You're also attacking and being attacked. So once that's all like squared away, I think the final product of this game is going to be really good, but it's definitely worth playing right now. I already have 20 plus hours in the game and I've only touched a fraction of the map. So I'll easily probably get 50 to 100 hours out of this game, even without the base raids. And when they fix the base raids, I'll definitely be jumping back in and trying those out. So if you found this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button. And if you want to support the channel even more, check out my Patreon via the card on the screen right now. You'll get access to all my videos 100% ad-free, usually before they're posted to YouTube, as well as some exclusive content that's available on Patreon only. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.